Hello, welcome to this TDI webinar. What a treat to be here. We are the Street Manager Gang. We'll introduce ourselves now. My name, Paul Chandler. I'm the product owner for Street Manager. With me today, lucky enough to be joined by Mr. Davidson. Introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Kyle Davidson. I'm the technical lead for Street Manager. Happy to be here today. Thanks for having me.
And we've also got...
Hi everyone, I'm Sally Kendall. Again, nice to be here today.
And genuinely, you know, we went live in what was supposed to be April this year and turned into July. And we would have been due to speak at, you know, a variety of industry events, but all that got cancelled, of course. So for us, this is a chance to meet some new people, you know, spread the word about the product. So it is genuinely a treat to be doing this. So what is Street Manager? Let's assume that you don't know. Street Manager is a digital service that went live, like I said, in July this year, replacing the old Eaton service, and it is for the as you can see there, you know, the management of roadworks within England. It's been a successful launch. We've got you know, thousands of users. We'll see some numbers in a second, but the key thing we're here to talk to you guys about today is the open data part of it. That is already online and available, and we're going to see today some info about that, some demo. So without going into the whole history of the Street Manager project, is there anything else you want to say on Street Manager itself, Sally, or have I captured that okay?
No, just to say that it was always, you know, as well as delivering other benefits, we were always keen to make sure that Street Manager was able to provide open data on live and planned works. We know that there's hopefully a big market out there for that sort of information. We all want to know when our journeys are being disrupted for whatever reason. So the open data streaming has also been live since July. We've added to the data that we published at the end of September, and we'll continue to also keep that under review. But I'm sure as we go through the presentation, you'll get to hear lots more about what's available.
Indeed, yeah. If you just slide on over to the next slide, Kyle. Here's those numbers that I mentioned. Just wanted to give you a quick oversight. So 213,000 permits raised, just, you know, in the last month. That's fairly typical. It doesn't mean those were all works that happened, of course. Some of them got refused and cancelled and all that good stuff. 975, you know, nearly 1 million notifications via the open data streaming service. Wow, that is a number I hadn't seen until yesterday. That's kind of mind-blowing. You know, 155,000 work stops. So, you know, finally, we're getting to this question that the DFT couldn't answer before Street Manager very easily at all, of how many works are taking place in the country, you know, and it's possible that you know, why is there 50,000 more work stops than starts? I guess people are packing up for Christmas. That's kind of the thing we've seen in the last month, and that's the kind of thing we can get into with this data now as well. So if you can go ahead, Kyle. That's just some numbers to give you some ideas of what we're dealing with on the project. I think we've got 9,000 registered users the last I had a look. So this is what we want to talk to you guys about today. Sally, did you want to maybe give us a bit of the background of the open data and talk about what sort of priority this is for the DFT?
Hi, yes, so some of you may know that the DFT is developing a data strategy. It's very important for our ministers and department that we try and make as much transport data digital and in turn open, so that anyone can freely download it and use it for whatever purpose. So Street Manager is part of that overall strategy. As I mentioned earlier, we've had some data available when Street Manager went live in July, and we've added more since September. Did you want me to talk through the rest of this slide, Paul?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Okay, so it is available. The guys will show you where you can get it from, how you can set up an account on our website, but any organisation or individual can create an account to access what is the Roadworks API service. And there's a whole range of uses, you know, that as we were developing Street Manager, we could see that this data could be used for. So we've listed some here: traffic routing services, third-party app developers. You know, I've been hearing, for instance, about some app developers that's developed new products for cyclists. Wouldn't knowing where the roadworks are going to be on any given day really help with that sort of app, as well as I'm sure some others that you could probably think of. There's already an existing range of journey planning services, sat navs, that could also equally make use of this data. As we get to further development of connected autonomous vehicles, they're going to need to know where the roadworks are. So again, just to say, Street Manager has data on planned works and also live works. And the start and stop notices we actually also changed earlier this year, so that on a weekday those are available within 2 hours of work starting and work stopping. So that also improved the timeliness of that data. We're hoping next year to consult on some further amendments to that so that we get those more timely updates at weekends as well. And then again, we also know, and I'm sure many of you may actually also be involved with the whole range of smart city initiatives that's happening across the country. Many local authorities are taking part in some of these trials. So again, this, you know, we hope that this would be a pretty key data set that you could use as part of that development. And then more, obviously, there's the network managers and the whole range of tools that's already out there to help with managing congestion, the disruption planning tools, etc. So I think I'm going to pass back to you guys actually to take through how you can actually set up an account.
Sure, thank you, Sally. I've been remiss actually. I should have given a big heads up to the Q&A. So, you know, just fire in your questions, guys, in that chat channel as we go through this. You know, it's going to be that Q&A that's going to make this a success. Really, we don't have, like, you know, hundreds of slides for you this morning, so we'll go through. We're going to talk about, like Sally says, how you sign up for an account and some of the technical stuff, and then we're going to do a bit of a demo later in the session as well. So really, you know, a key part of this is the question. So anything you've got, fire it away in that channel. But now it's my great pleasure to hand over to Kyle for what I call the science. Kyle.
Thanks very much. Yeah, well, so as Paul and Sally have touched on, the core Street Manager service, although it's designed for registered users of HA utility or contracting organizations, the actual data that's gathered around the events carried out by those organizations is available to the public. So information about the utility street works and HA roadworks of the public road network of England is published for anyone to use. And for me, that was pretty cool. Anyone can sign up to be an open data user. I myself am an open data user. I signed up to the service as a member of the public and developed an application in my spare time as a sort of weekend project, and I will show you that a little later on. Hopefully it should help visualize some of the information available as part of being an open data subscriber. The sign up process itself, you know, there's some handy links here. I will walk through it as well, but it's very simple. And at the moment, if you were an open data user, you could be receiving notifications about live works. As it says here, that's been in place since the 1st of July and more recently, activity events. For example, special events, Section 58 road restrictions, highway licenses for skips and scaffolds and things like that, which has been available since the 24th of September. And the way that all works, without getting too much into the science, is essentially via on-demand cloud web services, which poll for events happening on Street Manager and essentially aggregate the information about those events into notifications and deliver them out to subscribers. Becoming a subscriber, again, I mean, you can see here, it's very straightforward. Once you've navigated to the Gov UK account creation section, which is linked in the previous slide, you're asked to provide some basic information about yourself. This includes whether you're representing yourself as an individual or an organization, and how you plan to process and use the data. The most important thing here really to point out is the API endpoint field. This is the URL of the service you need to develop to receive open data notifications and actually process them. So developing that API endpoint is essentially the first step in all of this. You should have that in place before you actually register to receive notifications, because that's essentially what will process them. In the case of my my website that I have built, it's the realtimeroadworks.co.uk. The link is in an earlier slide there. I built an API endpoint, which I use to sign up to the service and receive the open data notifications. It processes them into a database so that I have access to everything retrospectively. As data flows into the database, this in turn sends out notifications to something called a serverless Lambda, which is just a fancy way of saying a bit of code on the cloud, which only pops up when it's actually needed. It's not something that's always running like an API or a website. And finally, all this makes its way back to the website where you see all the visual information, which I will demonstrate later. Again, the most important thing which I want to highlight is really just the API endpoint. That's what's ultimately powering the URL that as you register, you would provide to Street Manager. So in terms of the actual data available to you for live work events in particular, you can see there's quite a bit of information. We have things like reference numbers of the works being carried out, details about the work itself, times, dates, severity. We even have information in there around whether the work is in response to COVID-19. I imagine different people will be interested in different properties specifically, but there's a lot of key information to work with. There's a number of events which can trigger these notifications to be sent out, which is all detailed in the documentation, but I've included them here as well. So for example, you would get notifications containing this information when a permit application is submitted or assessed. As well as the live work information, we also have activity data. So for activities, we have some similar properties and some new ones. And again, that information is sent out during a handful of key events or transactions. For example, when an activity is created or cancelled or updated. All of the information that is made available is, I suppose, carefully considered by a core governance group made up of highway authorities, work promoters, contractors, very much for the people, by the people. And that's hopefully a clear indication of what's out there at the moment ready for use. So we've got a few ideas around potential use cases that I believe Paul is going to tell you about.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. Lovely stuff there on the makeup of the governance group as well. I thought that was like, I felt like myself talking there almost. So these were just some examples of use cases that we came up with, for instance. So, you know, a local authority website, you know, like Kyle, how many months were you building your thing for? How long did that take, start to finish, just roughly?
2 days.
2 days. Okay. So that illustrates what can be done here. You know, like if you know what you're doing, it's not some huge solution just to embed this on a local authority website. I like the idea of taking this information and going into these traffic control centres. You know, Transport for London have got one. I know that there's one in the West Midlands. I think that the Greater Manchester guys have got something similar. By all means, you know, that's a perfect example. I've had conversations with people looking to use them on the VMS boards. You know, the boards that have information about upcoming events and stuff. I think that's a really interesting use case. I'd want to be like really sure about the quality of the information, I think, before I was pushing that out. But it's a great example of what can potentially be done with this stuff. Sally, a couple of these came from yourself. Do you want to pick up on any of these?
Yeah, so I remember when we were doing some of the roadshows, when we were developing Street Manager, for instance, somebody saying in a local authority that they have a daily call from Asda's who were wanting to know where the roadworks are to help with their deliveries that day. So there's no reason why they or any other supermarket, you know, couldn't go up and receive that information. So these were just some of the ones we thought of, but one of the reasons why we are just publishing the data through an API is that we strongly believe that you guys are all much better than us at thinking about how, you know, you could use this data. I see there's a question, by the way. We're doing questions now, but there's somebody's thought of another use case in the questions about working with bus operators. So bus companies would actually be another great recipient of this sort of information so that they would know when their routes are being disrupted. Because as we mentioned before, it tells them about planned events and then it gives them real-time updates once the works actually happen.
Yeah, I did see that one about the bus operators, and I guess that's a really interesting, you know, we need to make sure, like, it's not are we working with them, it's you know, do the bus operators know about this? You know, this data is available right now, you know, go and take it and do whatever you like with it. That's a great example. And if there's anything that anyone here can do to kind of make sure that there's awareness out there, and we've probably got some links in the DFT, Sally, that we can use to you know, make sure that awareness is out there. Okay, I think that's it for use cases. So the next thing we wanted to talk about is a little bit on future enhancements. So if you give this a little stab, Kyle, and then I can chip in as well. Yeah.
So looking to the future, we've got our eyes on a number of enhancements that we want to make to improve the service. Of course, number one probably is to make more data available for the public consumption. So that means new events to be aware of, new information about existing events. Historical access is something we're quite keen on. Obviously, these events being real time means that, you know, if you had developed a service to gather this data and for talk's sake it went down for maintenance, you would want to have a mechanism to request the information that you missed. And again, listening to the user base and seeing what we can do to make it a bit easier to use for everyone. One thing I've seen raised, for example, is the ability to receive these updates in other ways rather than building a public API endpoint. I think I've seen one person who would actually prefer to have them emailed, which is possible. It's things like that we take on board and prioritize in the backlog and do our best to implement. And I know, Paul, yeah, I'm sure you have a few ideas of your own. And we're going to give the guys an opportunity to go through some of the Q&A questions in a second. So I think I'll just hand the microphone back to you.
Yeah, I mean, because it was a ministerial priority, we've put a fair bit of effort recently into the open data, getting it to where it is now. So what we're looking for is that feedback from users saying, well, this is good, but this is the number one thing that we need, you know, from you guys to really take this up a notch. You know, because the the open data resource is the same resource that's doing the continuous improvement for you know, our user base using the actual service itself. So yeah, we're happy to do these things, but we just need to know, you know, what the order is and, you know, how important these things are to the people using the data. So you know, you guys, our potential users out there, are a pretty key part of any prioritization of improvements. So that takes us really, guys, to the Q&A. That is the kind of Street Manager overview, you know, a very brief bit about the project that we've been working on since late 2017. Well, earlier than that, really, if you go back to the discovery. But, you know, it is a live service. There's literally hundreds of thousands of transactions happening each month. But what questions do you have about the Street Manager Open Data Service? Let's take a look. Is Street Manager in use in Scotland? Good question. I'm going to let Sally Kendall answer that because she could put a bit more flesh on the bones than me, maybe.
Hi, so Street Manager is just England. I believe the Roadworks Commissioner in Scotland has their own register, and the Welsh Government are, I believe, currently looking at what they can do in Wales. So it is just England at the moment.
There's a great question here. How sure can a user of the API be that if it says that a road is closed, it actually is? That is a problem we still have. So if you think about a job that goes on for a month, say, you might not need that road closure for the whole part of the month. You might just have the road closed for the first week, and then you're doing the rest of it under a lane closure. So that is a drawback of the information we've currently got. It doesn't affect the vast majority of jobs. 98% or whatever it might be of jobs on the network just have one type of traffic management through their life. But what I would like to do down the line, we've got it on the roadmap, is introduce what I call phasing for traffic management. So as a voluntary basis, a utility would be able to say, so we're starting off in the footway essentially on this job, then we're doing a road crossing, and they could kind of start and stop these different phases of the job to increase the accuracy of the information. So that's a great question, Rob, and that is something that we're aware of. Okay, strap on to your seats, Kyle. This is a technical question. The post is only open to hosts in Amazon Web Services IP range. Any plans to open this out to other hosts?
Yes. So at the minute, the API endpoints that you have to set up per the onboarding process it's a post URL of HTTPS or HTTP. The IP range, it's not an overly difficult problem to solve. I think it's just something that we need to prioritize and play, but absolutely possible. Okay,
that's a very fair answer. Someone says we'll look to implement this into the like the bus operators feed in Hull, which is great news. Someone says access to historical data is important for filling in gaps. When will historic access be available? So thanks, Jeffrey. That's the kind of feedback we need to just decide that that's something users need, and we can look to prioritize it. It's in the backlog, but it isn't kind of, you know, on the immediate to-do list. So let me take that away and have a review. Are there any?
Paul,
right. Yeah.
So can I just expand on that? So what we would like to do, actually, and we're currently working on, is publishing some statistical bulletins on the open data page, hopefully from next spring. So what this will be is statistical data that will have some key indicators such as number of permits issued, etc., who's doing the works by sector, some sort of regional analysis, and we can also include in those statistics some of the data that we're not currently publishing on the open data. So I'm not sure if this is exactly what you're looking for by way of historic data, but over time you will be able to see trends from those bulletins and be able to use them for more research purposes as well. But this is sort of great feedback to have, you know, on the use cases, and going back to the point that was just asked about the IP endpoints. If we can see that there's demand for those and interest in those, then that will help us evolve the service so that we can give you what you need.
Just to add a bit more to that as well, particularly on the historical access, it's something that's been on our radar for quite some time, and we've designed the solution for open data around being able to achieve it. So there is already essentially internal backups in place that would allow users to acquire that information. We just need to build the missing piece around actually being able to query it.
Let's talk about the estimate for that missing piece offline, sir. There's a great question here. Strap yourselves in, guys. Are there any free text fields in the data that could give context to explain what the roadworks are? Let's just pause there. No, there's two free text fields that aren't included that people probably would like to see. They are the works description. So that is free text that should be in plain English, but often isn't, that says something like new supply or water leak or 25 meters of duct to seaway, you know, all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff. I think that would certainly be useful. The person who asked the question says potentially help describe how this might result in a disruption. So if you know what you're looking for, you could potentially use the information in that free text to make that decision as a user. If you had some experience of those fields, it's not always easy to pass that out. And then you also, what the other field you're missing is the free text location field. So outside 21, from the junction, site, you know, all that good stuff. And again, depending on what you've got available to you, you know, if you're just looking at a point, and the point could mean the whole road, that is something that would help you work out what the real impact here and what was going on. So as Kyle said earlier, it's the governance group with us that decides what fields go into this open data. And there are currently parties on the governance group that would prefer those two fields not to be added. Funnily enough, it's up for review.
It may be so, but it may be there's a way around this as well, of instead of having free text, having more drop-down lists, because then we can be a little bit more certain about the information that's being published, and we can overcome some of the sensitivities. So just for your information, Street Manager has other information, but some of it's personal, some of it's commercially sensitive. So the governance group is quite rightly concerned about making some of that available. But we are keeping these under review constantly, and it may be that there's a way of doing this and making it freely available. Again, if there's demand for this type of information.
Yeah, and you do have the activity type included in the open data, and the activity type was specifically included to give users of the data, you know, residents and motorists, oh, you know, in sort of 2 or 3 words, oh, it's a new supply, oh, it's emergency works, you know, rather than that kind of free text that isn't always helpful. So I hope that's answered the question. That's it's an interesting area, that one. I do feel that what we provide in the vast majority of cases should let you work out what the context of the job is. Here's one. can you describe the trigger for the various event types? So in my simple terms, Kyle, like one trigger would be that the promoter puts the work into progress through a work start. They stop it through the work stop. They propose the work, so that creates an activity type. I'm sure there's others.
Yeah, it's very much depending on the event life cycle triggers. So taking the live works data, the point of submission, the point of assessment, when it's start and stopped, as Paul said, cancelled. It's all at the minute very much focused around permits for the live works data in particular, but that's all documented, so you will be able to anticipate and actually see per the notifications which event has resulted in the trigger itself.
Do you know, I was worried about not having any questions, and now I'm worried about too many questions. So that's fine. That's fine. So can I get all the historical data from when Street Manager went live once I establish an endpoint, Kyle?
So this is the historical access we've been talking about. So that is in the roadmap. But at the point, as of right now, if you set up as a subscriber, you'll only be receiving notifications from essentially here on out.
Kyle, if people are going to incorporate this into their traffic management back office, they need to develop an adapter based on the current format of the API. You know, is it likely to remain stable?
Yes, 100%. For me, for the purposes of my website, I needed to funnel the data into my own private data source, essentially. So I've pretty much done the same thing in a much more individual and probably a lot lighter, easy to do way of being able to do it in a couple of days. But it's keeping it stable and making sure we don't break the integrations is obviously priority one from a technical perspective.
Do we need to pay to use AWS in order to access the information?
No. For talk's sake, my website, it's actually built on AWS. You don't, but I use the free tier services, so I essentially pay for what I use, and unless I have 1 million active users of the website, I'm not paying for anything except for the domain name, which I didn't have to do. I wanted some neat and tidy URL. Seems
fair. How are updates to the event message schema managed? I mean, I'm learning here as well. Is there a user list that we will notify?
There is. Well, it's more like a URL list. It's essentially a list of the services that have registered is how the notifications are sent out, and we have alerting set up so that if any, for whatever reason, if any alerts or notifications aren't being sent out, we'll be made aware, and we'll investigate why that might be, because it could be an issue on the user end, it could be an issue on our end, but the important thing is that we send the event out again and make sure it gets to where it needs to go.
Are there any limits to what data can be extracted from Street Manager? I mean, I suppose it's within the confines of those fields that we showed you in the first couple of slides, or do you think this user is talking about sort of volumes or something, Kyle?
No, I think the current data set, keeping in mind that we obviously aim to extend it, what's there is documented right now, but we will be actively iterating on it and working on it as we go forward.
The AWS IP range is a bit of a barrier, Carl. I think this is the first I'm hearing of this. What can we do here?
It is. We can take that to outside of this call and prioritize it in the backlog.
Okay. Sally, can there be more cross-government working with traffic commissioners to push this information?
So we do work quite closely with the team that's been doing the Bus Open Data project, but I will actually mention this to them, yes, because it may be that we can use their networks again to publicise the fact that this data is now available. So yeah, good point. I'll get in touch with the team.
I work with bus data. At the moment, the public bus feeds, that's TNDS and BODs, I don't know if that means anything to you, Sally, don't show the route following the roads. As such, we won't be able to work out if a route is impacted by a closure or not. Is it possible to encourage this information is published with the timetable data?
So BODS is bus open data. I'm afraid I don't know what TNDS is. But again, another good point. I'm not up on the level of detail there, but I can get in touch with the team and pass that question on. But I think there's a general point about coordinating between the data systems, which we'll definitely take away. Actually, I think it's a very good point.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're kind of going out beyond open data here as well. And what we're talking about there to a certain extent is local authority highways teams working with the bus operators in their area to make sure the information about road closures is going to them. Hopefully open data can help with that, you know. So by historic data, Carl, we were talking about the actual records that would have been published, that would have been pushed out when published. You know, so this is that business about going back, you know, so you get an open data field working today. Can you get last week's stuff, or is that like for the birds now at the moment?
No, it's not for the birds. I kind of see them all as related. So there's obviously events you might have missed after you've got the service set up. There's events that occurred before you ever set the service up, and there's of course real historical info, things that existed before even open data notifications were built. I think all of those things can be achieved with the same solution. We just need to sit down and figure out what's going to work for the majority of users, because I imagine different people will have different more ideal ways to request that information.
Okay. I'm going to just take one or two more questions because I want to start the demo at a certain time. That won't take too long, and then we can get back to questions. Right, Kyle, can you clarify? I think everyone is saying they need an AWS instance to receive the data. From my interpretation, it's that they need to be able to receive data from AWS IP range. They can host the receiving server anywhere on any IP range, but they need to be able to receive from AWS IP range. Is that interpretation right?
So that is different to what I was thinking, but if that is the case, we'll need to, I mean, that has a totally different, I would need to sit down and actually look into detail about how that can be achieved, because essentially it sounds like the problem is on the user end there to not have those IPs restricted. So we would obviously have to document and provide some information about how you can get around that. Thanks,
Kyle, and thanks, Adam, for making me read that out as well. Maybe the no offence, it was very technical in nature, but maybe one of the clunkier sentences I've ever had to read out loud without having read it first. Here's a question for you, Sally. How is the real-time roadworks any different from existing systems such as Elgin? So real-time roadworks is just a project that Kyle set up in a couple of nights. You know, he's not like selling that commercially or anything. The question is, how is the open data different? So the open data is now you know, free and out there and published to anyone. Whereas what you have with the great guys from Elgin is that they've got relationships with local authorities where they were pulling that information individually from them, you know, and a lot of hard work it was to get to that position as well. Fair play to them. Ali, anything else on that one?
Yes, just to sort of emphasise as well. Yeah, so we're just showing you Carl's demo just as a demo of how anyone could set up quite easily, you know, a product. We're not sort of officially promoting this or anything. It's just a demo of how easy it is to use the data and do something useful with it. And yeah, the main point about Street Manager data is it's one-stop shop. You know, this is the first time the government's published comprehensive data from every authority in England covering all works and some activities And as Paul said, it's freely available. So again, companies like Elgin can take it and use it in their range of products. Other companies can do something similar. So yeah, it's a one-stop shop. And what it also does is it allows us to now use Street Manager. So now it's live, it's been used for all sorts of things. Users have got more ideas about how else we can use it in the future. It also means that any new fields or any information we bring into Street Manager, we can also then publish that out as well. So it'll be continuously improved alongside the service. So it's just a different source of the information, but as I said, it's comprehensive, and you know, we think it's a great evolution for transport data. So yeah, we hope that you want to access it and use it.
What a great note to switch to the demo on. Thank you, Sally. We will show you this, guys, and then go back to any more questions that have come in and some of the ones that we've not had a chance to answer yet. And indeed, we will any questions we don't answer today, we will make sure we get an answer in writing to the attendees list, or however this group normally answers outstanding questions. Kyle.
Yeah, so I'm going to switch my share to Google. Just let me know if you can see that okay.
Yes, that is Google. It is up and running today, I can confirm.
Yeah. So yeah, this real-time roadworks.co.uk, this is just a thing, a quick evening project for me. Let's see, it's just before launch on a Tuesday. So I suspect we'll have a couple of events kicking off around England. This is kind of what you're seeing right now. It's just a real-time sort of aggregation of the metrics from the point at which I'd actually created this service. So I set this up at the end of August, pretty much the last day in August, and there's been quite a lot of activity since then. I decided to showcase the live works data in particular, events like work start and stop, permit submission assessment, and running totals, again, from when I set up the service. I've also built a live event stream, so you can see exactly what is happening in more detail. We've got information about what events are occurring, the organizations involved, the category of the works, whether it's minor, standard, or major, some information about the life cycle of the work itself, whether it's just starting, in progress, or complete. And wow, it's quite busy at the moment. Again, you don't have to refresh your page, so this can grow quite unwieldy. But as I say, this is just a wee quick personal thing for me to help understand the open data process a bit better. I've also built a very simple map to sort of visualize the location of these events. You can sort of see towards London quite a bit going on, but also around many different parts of England. And I suppose the thing for me is this took me 2 nights to build. Speaking from experience, usually the way a personal project, especially one involving a public data source, typically goes is, you spend the majority of your time learning the structure of the data being sent and adjust your code through a sort of trial and error process to fully process it all correctly. That's sort of my workflow for something that's a personal project. With this project in particular, the documentation that was provided had everything I needed, really. The onboarding process, I mean, we've seen it, it's straightforward. I really didn't have to spend any time figuring out what the data would look like, thanks to the information that was already available before I even signed up. And it was just a useful project for me as I was to approach open data as a user rather than an architect. I think that really validated the approach for me and helped identify any pain points in the onboarding process. And yeah, I mean, the guys have already touched on it. Like, if this is just a personal couple of days from a house, imagine what a commercial organization could achieve with a team. this is not, you know, I don't make any money off of this. I lose money, in fact, with the with the domain billing from AWS. But that's just something that I thought I was really interested when I was working on this project and seeing that we were doing an open data solution. I've never worked on a project that did that, and I thought that's a great opportunity to kind of try and do something cool with it. The map is kind of how I visualized the whole idea initially. I'd like to change it someday so it's a bit more like a heat map. You know, you can kind of see where's busier. You could filter by places where works are in progress. That would help visualize road congestion potentially. Just things like that. But it's purely a passion project.
Kyle, I have been listening to you, but also I've been seeing, just hypnotized by these little blips popping up all over the place. Can we go to like Manchester or something and just like see what happens when we zoom in a bit closer?
Yeah, I'm gonna home in on this guy because I just seen it just popped up there now. So this, even the map service is a free map service. Anyone could use this. It's not as good as the official Street Manager one. But yeah, this is just like a OpenStreetMap, I believe it's called. And yeah, there you go. Obviously, you could sit on this and see how much your computer handles because it is very busy. There's a lot going on. But yeah, it's just something I wanted to show you guys. Hopefully,
it's a lovely illustration, Carl. Thank you for that. Yeah, there's something hypnotic about it and something educational as well about seeing where the work is happening, and how much is happening in major conurbations and all that kind of good stuff. Okay, so let's go back to the questions gang. Here's one. It's not really an open data question in a sense. When will Section 58 restrictions fully transfer to Street Manager? I would probably say by the summer, maybe. The governance group have flagged it as a priority. We know what we want to do with Section 58s, and funnily enough, we want to put Section 58s into open data as well, because when we move them out of activities and sort of integrate them more fully into Street Manager, you'll lose them out of the open data. So we need to make sure that we are still giving them to people as part of the open data. Here's one. Are all works, here you go, Sally, are all works made available with limited information, or are there works subject to sensitivity that aren't available through the open data field?
So it's all works, and the information, the fields that we are publishing, I believe, are all mandatory fields. The activity data is voluntary, but I believe for the works, it's all works and the fields are mandatory. There is an ability within Street Manager for a company to mark a work as sensitive, so it's not published. So I always use the example of a new cable into the MI5 building or something. But apart from those few very limited cases, it's all works.
It's worth saying that forward plans aren't a part of the open data field. So if there was concerns about commercial sensitivity, for instance, that would be a way to assist with that. That is a topic we'd come up against. Here's one for you, KD. AWS is just one cloud facility, and most integration services reside elsewhere, such as in traffic control centers and private data centers. Can any restrictions regarding IP location be lifted, or if not, limited to UK-wide address ranges?
Yeah, that sounds sensible, to be honest. Don't worry, I know there's been quite a few questions about this. I've written it down. I'll make sure it gets looked at.
Cool. That's all gravy. Okay, another comment on the address range, Sally?
I was just going to say there's a question about how comprehensive is Street Manager. Whoever can't see roadworks in my area in England. is every highway authority in England is submitting data to Street Manager. It's a legal requirement to do that, so it should be very comprehensive. If there's maybe no roadworks there on the day in your area, it may be because there's no roadworks on that day in your area, but we know that every authority is using it and is submitting data.
Yeah, and that's just bear in mind what we mean by roadworks and streetworks. You know, these are things that you need a notice or a permit under the New Roads and Streetworks Act, the TMA. You're not talking about, you know, occasionally you get bits of work for developments and things like that. And they might be logged as activities with a bit of luck, but they're not strictly street work. So that's a bit of a technical point, but you know, just there might be things that aren't covered by that legislation. Oh, okay. This is all great. Well done, everyone. Okay, there you go. Yes, great news. Yeah, we're happy to have chats, Adam. That's fine. Get registered and stuff if you're not already. And yeah, you know, we've had quick calls with people before to move things forward. Oh, I see. Anonymous says, is just how the map is loading the data then? Yeah, so that map that you saw in the demo was just literally since pilot, like what, refresh the session since you logged in like that time?
It is, yeah. So that was all real time. It's certain times of the day you can go on there, and it's so active. Even at night, I find it's, you know, after dinner, it's still quite busy. But yeah, as soon as you refresh the page, it's all real time.
Yeah, so that literally means that in that 5 minutes we were looking at that map, you didn't see something within your area, you know, but that's because you're lucky enough not to live in an area where things are happening every kind of 5 minutes. But if you looked at the actual data itself, then yeah, you'd see it all. Okay, guys. Well, it's 53 minutes past. We've got almost every question, I think, give or take. Here's one. Would there be an option for TM contacts for out of hours to support contacting both highways and police to be available to contact these companies when there is an issue with, say, traffic lights? Sam, I think that's a bit beyond the scope of open data. I think you would want to be a Street Manager user to be getting that information. Funnily enough, that's something we're working on just at the moment, designing how that would work. But because of all the phone numbers and stuff, people don't want phone numbers in open data and names and all that kind of stuff. So it's probably a no-no for the open data. Now, here's something I've wondered about for a long while. Does the map use WebSockets?
My map?
Well,
I presume it is, but the way it works is it's Amazon SNS notifications are sent out from my database to, because again, the whole architecture of the solution itself is AWS. There's some pretty easy to set up things for relatively complicated features under the hood. But as data is coming in from the open data subscriber URL to the API endpoint, it's essentially feeding that into a database, which is sending out SNS events to spin up these serverless lambdas, which I touched on earlier in this presentation, just little functional bits of code to then essentially notify a subscription that I set up with an API, an AWS API tool. I'm forgetting the name of it at the minute. They have these quirky names for all their things. The DB's technology is called DynamoDB. It's a NoSQL database. I must dig up the name of that API. You can tell I did this in 2 days and forgot about it.
But don't get hung up on Kyle's solution, you know. I mean, you can take this data and build whatever works for you guys pretty easily, as we've seen. So, Kyle, we've got like 5 minutes left. If you can go back to the slide that's got the like the sign up details on, the same one that included your link, funnily enough. Yeah, number 5. Yeah, okay. I mean, I feel like a bit like Bob Geldof at Live Aid, guys, trying to get people to sign up here. But I hope you've enjoyed today what you've seen, and you've learned something about the open data for Street Manager. So you know, what we want you to do now is go and sign up if you're the sort of person that might be interested in signing up. And if you're, you know, a local authority, you know, when you're speaking to people about, you know, bus data and ambulances and, you know, anything that might be of interest to people, your traffic control centre guys, get the message out there to them. And yeah, you know, from my point of view, thank you for asking questions, being a great audience, and you know, getting involved here today. Sally, any final thoughts from yourself?
Just to say thanks to the TDI for hosting this for us, and thank you to you all for attending.
Magic. I'm sorry, I was just distracted by Sam's last question. Yeah, that's a pertinent question, Sam. I'll give you that one. Any wise words from yourself, Kyle?
No, I mean, obviously, I do encourage everyone to try out the onboarding process and getting something spun up. Depending on what technologies you use as well. I don't even know if you need to be overly technical. I know I have a developer background, but to be honest, as I went through the process, particularly these platform as a service, software as a service solutions that Amazon in particular, but also Microsoft have built, they're really, I think they're taking away a lot of that technical detail and making it much more achievable for just general people. So if you are an individual watching this and you're kind of thinking this is too technical for me, I would still say give it a go.
I am watching it thinking it's too technical for me. I will give it a go. Thank you very much. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here today. We will get out of here on time. Go forth, prosper, and hope to see you on the open data platform. Take care of yourselves, guys. Thank you very much.